Hello, I'm Eric, and welcome to my madness. As you can tell, I'm a little bit of a Star Trek fan. Today, I'm going to be taking a look at Star Trek The Next Generation customizable card game. In particular, I want to take a look at all of the starter decks that were released for this game and discuss some of the changes that they made to the starter decks and go over some of the reasons why those changes were made. The original release of this game was in November 1994 with the Premier Limited Edition. This was followed up almost immediately in December 1994 with the Premier Unlimited Edition, which is now called the Alpha Print. And they made a quick reprint of that in February 95 that was exactly identical and also considered the Alpha Print. In June 1995, they released the Unlimited Beta, which at the time Decipher was even calling the beta release. And that release made some changes to some of the cards, mostly updating some errors, and updated the copyright date on all the cards to 1995. Now, before I get into the opening of the packs themselves and discussing them, I would like to discuss some of the basic rules concepts of the game. In in particular, I want to go over the basic structure of play with the cards so that when I talk about why they made changes to the starter decks, you'll understand the reasons for those changes. Now, the first thing to understand about the game is that it was played in two very distinct phases. The first phase was the uh, the seed phase, and during the seed phase, each player would start out by playing missions. The missions were basically places where your ship and crew would to go on adventures. And as you completed the missions, you would get points that would go towards your point goal for the game, which was usually 100 points. Now, each mission had its point value in the lower right hand corner. It had a list of which affiliations could play a particular mission and what abilities were needed to beat that mission. Each player was expected to have 6 missions in their deck, and they would play these missions to what was called the space line. So one player would start out playing their first mission, and then the opponent would play their mission next to it on either side. Then the first player could go back and play another mission, and the opponent could play a mission, and so forth and so on until all of the missions were played out. Now, here I only have 6 missions, but in a two-player game, you would have a total of 12 missions, 6 from each player. Now, after you played out the missions, you would play outposts. There was one outpost each of the major factions in the game. So in the original premiere release, there were 3 factions: Federation, Klingon, and Romulan. And you would play out outposts for whichever factions you were playing generally. Now, this meant that if you were playing 2 factions, you would generally need to play 2 outposts. And if you had cards from all 3 factions, you would need 3 outposts. So you'd play these outposts to your missions. And then the next step in the setup phase was dilemmas. Dilemmas represented specifically hazards and story points that your characters would have to overcome. Things that would go wrong, monsters or computers or diseases, whatever that you would encounter, and you would have to beat these. Before you could even attempt to beat a mission, you would have to beat the dilemmas. And each player in turn would play dilemmas underneath generally their opponent's missions, because you wanted to stop your opponent from beating his missions. So you'd go through this pre-play phase during the seed phase and set up all these missions or all these dilemmas under the missions. Now, the basic problem with the starter decks comes with the fact that it was hard to get these cards that you needed. The missions, there were a fair number of common and uncommon missions, and a decent number of rare ones. And a starter deck would have, uh, it was supposed to have two rare cards, 13 uncommon cards, and 45 common cards. Overall, given the number of missions, you had a reasonable chance of getting about five missions in a starter deck. That's kind of what you would expect to get on a random draw or from a randomized deck. The problem is you need six missions and you're expected to get about five from a deck. And not just that, but you needed missions that you could complete with the cards that you got in the deck. This could become an issue. And then, of course, you also needed cards that would line up with your factions. If you got mostly Federation characters, and then you had a mission that the Federation couldn't compete in or couldn't complete, you wouldn't be able to beat that mission. So it's pretty much worthless in your deck. As you see here, all of the missions I have can actually be played out by the Federation, but I only have three that have Klingon and three that have Romulan. So if you randomly got a bunch of Klingon and Romulan cards, there's three missions here that they can't even attempt to beat. Well, that each of those factions can't attempt to beat. There's four missions that they could attempt it with either Klingon or Romulan. And the secondary problem was these outposts. Outposts are all common cards, but there's only three of them. In the set, there's 121 cards. You have a pretty good chance of not even getting a single outpost in a starter deck. And even if you got a single outpost, you could get treaty cards like these. And these cards would allow you to play different factions together. But again, these were common cards, and even if you got everything you needed with the outposts and the treaties, it would still be very hard to make a playable deck on just one starter deck. Now, once you got past the basic setup phase, that's when you would get to play out your cards. One of the reasons why you needed outposts for each faction is if you have a Romulan ship can only be played to, it can only be report to Romulan uh, outpost. And the focus isn't working. Let's bring it down slow. There we go. And same thing with your Romulan characters. Romulan personnel only report to the Romulan outpost, and from the outpost, they could move to the Romulan ship. So if you have a mix of Romulan and Klingon cards, you can't play them if you don't get a Romulan outpost. And the same goes for your Klingon and your Federation. And generally speaking, unless you get one of the treaty cards, the ships and crews have to work completely independently. Now, once you get a treaty card in play, if you're lucky enough to get one and play it, at that point, your Federation personnel can join your Romulans on your Romulan ship. And even if you manage to get the other ones, the other treaties, you might be able to mix and match Klingons and Romulans together too. Of course, depending on which treaties you get, they might not mix the other way. Like right here, Romulans can work with Federation or Klingon, but Federation can't work with Klingon. Klingon cannot work with Federation directly. They can both work with Klingon, not the other way. So there were some very severe restraints on the type of the type of decks that could be built, especially with just one starter and maybe one or two booster packs. And when I open up the starters here in a minute, I'll go over the oh, not that one, that one. Once I open up the starter packs, I'll go over uh, all the cards that we get in. We'll see what kind of mix you could get in a starter deck. And then after I open up the initial starter packs for what I have here, which is the Premier Edition, then we can move on and I can show some of the later cards that they came out with that expanded on these decks in various ways and allowed them to play a little bit better starting out with a sealed deck. That becomes important if you want to do a sealed deck tournament or if you just are starting the game and you want to buy just enough cards to play. If all you have is one of these decks, you can't really play the game. So here I have two Premier Unlimited Edition decks. These are, say, white border on the front. Limited Edition says black border. This is obviously because the cards in them are their white border, black border. As can be seen here, I have some black border cards and some white border cards. So the initial release was the black border limited edition. Did not get one of those starters. Main reason for that is cost. Right now, those seem to be going for $30 to $35 for a pack. These two, the 1994 Alpha release was $6 a pack. Beta release was $2 a pack. I could afford to throw away an extra $4 just to get one 1994 deck for this opening. I wasn't going to go for $30 or $35 to get uh, the limited edition. It just wasn't worth it to me. Now, these decks are basically exactly identical. If you look at the front, top, sides, even the UPC codes on these, the backs. The other side here, it says product number 150 on both. So the only difference that you can tell from the outside of them is the bottom of the pack. There is a 1995 copyright date, 1994 copyright date. Generally, the 1994 is considered more valuable. I'm honestly not sure why exactly. The cards are mostly the same. They're all white border, but collectors really like the 1994 original release for whatever reason. So if you're looking into buying some of these, if you want collector value, go for the 1994 or try to get the limited edition. If you're just looking to get some packs, go for the 1995 release. These are pretty cheap. I got both of these actually at Category 1 Games, which is an excellent online retailer. Amazing customer service. So I'm saying that as a customer, not because they wanted me to or anything. I just have had good dealings with them. And these, like I said, the one was $6, one was $2. You can find these on eBay as well, although they tend to be a little more expensive. And you can find starter deck boxes at Hills Distribution. Those are pretty cheap too. Hills doesn't sell individual decks, at least of these. So it is time. I'm going to be opening up the 1994 one first, which is this one. Let's see if I can get it open. I think this does have quick open here. That doesn't want to cooperate. Let's see if I can get it from the bottom. Okay, it's starting to go. Point of no return. Opening my sealed products. So every one of these comes with rule book, which is can be seen right there in the middle. And the cards. Let's see. If I can get this open. There we go. So we do start out with a mission. Secret Sabotage. Federation personnel. This one's Alyssa Gawa. The Klingon personnel. Talk. Dilemma. El Adrel creature. Telepathic kidnappers event. Now, events in the game can be played during gameplay. So I'll say how they play. This particular one says plays to the table. Gives rules for what happens when it plays. Most events will be played to the table. I have a Plunder Site mission, which is a Romulan Klingon mission. Distortion of the space-time continuum. Let's see if I can get some better focus on this. It doesn't want to focus. So we got an interrupt. Interrupts play similar to events. They generally play to the table and are discarded. And they can be events, I believe, have to be played on your turn, whereas interrupts can be played interrupting your opponent's turn. So now we have Nora Satai. This is Federation. Mary Civilian. This is the non-aligned personnel. Neural Servo Device event. New Duck. This is a Klingon officer. Transwarp Conduit. Interrupt. Interrupt is Amanda Rogers. Book. Event, the Goddess of Empathy. Pegasus Search. This is a pretty good one. It's a little tough to beat, as you can see from all of the skills that are listed on it. It's 50 points and playable by any of the factions. Equipment. Pad. Clog. Anaphasic Organism Dilemma. Interrupt Particle File. Divok. Ignite. Dukoth. Klingon Disruptor. Jadon. Klingon Personnel. Static Warp Bubble. Event. Psylocke, our first Romulan. So far I've gone through about a third of the cards, and this is the only Romulan card I've gotten. Dr. Ferrick. Orcha class ship and a Cavort class ship. So I have a couple of Klingon ships at least, and a combat vessel. This is a non-aligned, so it can generally be used by non-aligned and any of the other factions, which is useful. It's actually in a sealed deck. That would be a very useful card to have, simply for the fact that it's not limited to the factions that it can. Tachyon Detection Grid. Klingon Rite of Vengeance. Another mission, the Investigate Anomaly, and another mission, Fever Emergency. Darian Wallace. This guy is a common. He's in everything. Klingon Pad. An outpost. I actually got a Romulan outpost, which is going to be real useful with that one Romulan card that I have. Dilemma Phased Matter. Tackett. Medical trained Romulan, so that's pretty good. Betrayal. Plague. This, I believe, is the first Federation ship I've gotten. Type 4 shuttlecraft. The one nice thing about the small shuttlecrafts They have no crew requirement listed here, which means that you can stick any Federation personnel on them at all. You can get them to go around. The Vorcha, this one has a 3 crew requirement. It requires an officer, 2 other personnel. So the shuttlecraft can be useful in that you can get them around real easily. Probiotic colony is a dilemma. USS Galaxy, here we go. This is another big ship, requires at least 3 crew. Callaway Medical. Vecma. Space Dock. This is an event. Espionage. Now this I didn't mention before, but this is another way that you can get the get missions beat, because this one, it plays on any Federation mission, and your Klingon personnel may attempt this mission. So if you can get some espionage cards, you may be able to beat missions also. Especially in sealed decks, these can be useful. And again, they're not guaranteed though. Medical kit. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. Tricorder. Jera. I think that's Patricia Tallman, the actress who played her. Galanthon. Romulan officer. Romulan disruptor. So we're finally getting a few Romulan. Wrath. Ship seizure. Male love interest to deliver. Subspace interference. A scout vessel. This is a Romulan shuttle, so that's useful. Torin. So if we take a look, this actually got a lot of Klingon cards. This deck wound up with a decent number of Romulan cards and a few Federation. Got 1 Romulan outpost, which would be useful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are expected 5 missions that we'll get in sealed pack. Of course, if we look at the missions, this one is Klingon only. Those 2 can be done by any, and these 2 are Klingon and Romulan. This means that if you were forced to build a deck using these, you need a lot of Klingon. Here's my 1995 pack. I do. I didn't do anything that you saw, but I messed up the screen that I had showing on my computer. Had to set something back so I could see. Come on, this one doesn't work. There we go. This again comes completely sealed, just like the previous one. There we go. I'm not sure what the rare cards are in the starters or what position they're in. So unfortunately, I can't say what rare cards are unless they're really good rare cards that I happen to remember. Ani Rao and Joe Brill. We have Kivas Fajo, the collector. We have mission, restore errant moon. USS Sutherland. Nebula class. Riddick Mine, a dilemma. Iran, Rift, evacuation. Tana Joel, a lot of non-aligned in this one. Firestorm, Hardek, Amulet, Anite Dilemma, Temporality Loop, Dr. LaForge. This is Jordy LaForge's father. So it's another rule book. Arler Toth, Alien Trader. This is cards that people really like, and here's the reason why. I exchanged this card for a personal card pile. So allows you to retrieve a really good card from your discard pile, which makes that good card all in itself. Come on. Loss of orbital stability. Simon Tarsis. Espionage. This is Federation on Klingon. This one I had Klingon Federation. Vendon. Dilemma, an anaphasic organism. Sea Transporter Armband. Taurik. Vulcan Engineer. Starfleet Phaser. Knight. Romulan Pad. Pattern Enhancer. Archer. Jadan. There's a common Klingon. Taurus. USS Nebula. So take a look at, you have the USS Sutherland and the USS Nebula. These are both Nebula class. They're generally similar ships. The Nebula has this symbol here, which means it's a generic ship. So you can have as many Nebulas in play as you want, whereas the USS Sutherland is a unique ship. So you can only have one of these in play at a time. USS Excelsior. Barrack. No one has gone before. Christopher Hobson. Engineering kit. Combat vessel. Study stellar collision. Air mission. Test mission. Investigate and now 6 or 7 missions in this deck. Iridian shuttlecraft. We got a Federation outpost. So we did manage to get one outpost in each of our starters. Klingon Pad. Becklore. Linda Larson. Federation Klingon Treaty. Packet. Computer weapon. Tate. Shuttlecraft. Tesh. Oh, this one actually has an interesting story behind it. Gatesh was played by an actor named John Tesh. At the time, he was working for Entertainment Tonight, and he was doing a story piece on Star Trek The Next Generation. Did a dozen of them or more over the years. Where they did stories on the show, and he played one of the Klingons that zapped Worf in his Rite of Ascension. He was a hologram, so thus he has the hologram symbol on him. And when they went to make the card, they named him Katesh after the actor. Escape Pod. Red Alert. Callaway. USS Miranda. Engineering Pad. And Clag. So this deck, let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 missions. Actually, all Federation missions. few that I could play with other factions. I got a whole bunch of Federation cards in this deck, a couple of Klingon and a couple of Romulan. I got a Federation outpost. This deck, the way I got it, may almost be playable. The Klingon and Romulan cards are pretty much worthless, but the rest of the cards almost make a playable deck. Now, by the time they were releasing this in 1994 or 1995, this is the premier unlimited edition beta. They had already realized issues with playability of starter decks. So what they did was release the free warp pack. This, they did give them away for free. These days, you got to pay about $5 for one. Not really worth it for the cards, in my opinion, but I wanted to get one for this. But it does have some unique cards in it. For one thing, all of the cards in it are white border, including a couple that would only be released with black border in their main sets that they came in. So that does make them somewhat unique. If you're a collector, you might want to get it for that alone. They gave away thousands, tens of thousands of these, maybe hundreds of thousands. You could mail in to get them, but you could generally get a hold of them in a number of ways. I think they gave some away in magazines. They gave some away in stores. They would send boxes with like 3 dozen of these and tell the store to give it away. The stores had so many of them that they would give customers 2 or 3 if they asked for them at the time, or more. Even though it says 1 per customer, please. See if I can get a good. There we go. So this contains 12 common cards. This the type of cards that it has. Some special rules that some of the cards had. Orta here. He's a pretty common guy. He's got engineering and physics, which is useful. And here's the first thing that really helped you build a deck if you had one of these free warp packs. Neutral outpost. At this outpost, you can seed any personnel, or not seed, report any personnel or ships. So if you have a Romulan, Klingon, Federation, whatever, you could actually play them to this outpost. This outpost would be released in the next expansion set, and I think it's a common card in that set. Yellow alert. This was another one that they added. And as you see here, it says it prevents red alert and all your personnel are each cunning +1. So it'll discard or prevent red alert. Red alert was a card that was very common and very abusive in some ways. So Warp Pack included a way to counteract that. Montgomery Scott. It's out of focus down here. Black border was a common card in alternate universes. This is a white border version of him. But he was like so dirt common it wasn't even funny. But this is the white border version. So if you're a collector, this is a nice one to have. Countermanda nullifies telepathic alien kidnappers. Or Parlor Toff. Basically a counter card. And then we have 6 missions here. 7 missions. 5, 6, and 7. And this basically gave you a nice mission base to try to build. I think one of them, Sensitive Search, I think is the one be reprinted later. It was unique to this set at the time. Printed later. The others were all common card missions from the Premier Edition. But this gave you a nice mix of missions where you could actually build a deck around them, stand a chance of beating it. You could do basically two faction if you had to, because most of these could be played out with any faction. Three that can't form a triangle, two Federation, two Klingon, or two Romulan. So this was the first method that they used to try to counteract the issues with deck building. And this worked pretty well, actually, because it gave a good mix of cards and only 12 cards that would allow you to be able to build a decent playable deck. If you had that free warp pack combined with one of these starters, or at least on your way to getting something useful and playable. Let's see, I went to this. So the next item that was released was the introductory two-player game. I'm going to skip past that one because that one's going to take a little while to go over. I will come back to that later. But that game came as a box set. I have the box set right here. And it came with two play decks, one for Federation, one for Klingon. And those decks were made entirely of common cards. There were no rare cards or even uncommon cards in them. It was entirely common cards. So the rare cards that you got in this set actually came from the extra pack-ins that they had. Every set came with a Day to Laughing and the Admiral McCoy. And the Klingon set came with 3 extra Klingon cards. The Federation set, which is harder to find these days, comes with 3 Federation cards. So those are essentially the rare cards in that set because that was the only place you could get those. Now, the next item to come out was the official tournament sealed deck. And this isn't a starter deck in and of itself. It was meant to be given away during sealed tournaments. And it contained a 20 card pack, cards that were all exactly identical in every sealed deck. And those 20 cards included some missions, so I'll show you that. And it included some booster packs. And it included a really nice deck box. Here I got the Bajoran deck box. So that deck box, these are nice sturdy cardboard boxes. You could hold a good chunk of cards in. I think it was supposed to be like 150 cards without deck protector, 75 with deck protector, so you could get basically a good play deck or two in them. We have 4 booster packs for the Premier Beta Edition. It's the unlimited. 1 alternate universe and 1 20 card pack. Then it has rule sheet, which includes some advertisements, some notes. Save $5 off of the uncut sheets, $20 off of the bundled set of Klingon and Federation 2-player decks. So there were some giveaway offers at the time. Order your Fajo collection. I have one of these I'll eventually be opening too. So we'll start out with the 20 card insert pack, which is the main reason you would buy one of these, since these expansion decks aren't aren't too valuable outside of the box and this 20 card pack. These these booster packs are worth about $1 each. So come on, focus is not its thing. Come on, here we go. Scientific method, pose order. So this is a decent mission. It's a dilemma. Make us go. Crew card with a decent amount of abilities. Aramis, another decent dilemma. Mineral survey. There's a mission that can be attempted by any away team. Reflection therapy. So have Suna can download reflection therapy, then reflection therapy. So to form a combo. And it's just going to fight me all the way. Hide and seek. This is a Q dilemma. It's only really used. Excuse me. It's only really useful if you're playing a lot of Q cards, but it's a unique card that you can get. And here we have a non-aligned outpost. Again, if you're playing a sealed deck, if you're this would be extremely useful since it would be an outpost that you could report any factions cards to. This particular one, uh, it allows you to download a Husnack ship face up, or May Seed rather, not download. So when you play it, you can play a Husnack ship directly to it and start with a ship. Investigate incursion. Here's another one where any crew may attempt the mission. Doorway. This one is pretty useful. Let's see. Forget what the effect of it is. Space door is now open. Reducing out shields by 8. In place of your normal card, you may either call one of your ships here, return the ship to the hand, nullifies the stored static warp bubble. So if you have a ship that's gotten stuck somewhere, you can return it to your hand. Or you can download to here one space dock or generic ship that is compatible outpost. So it'll allow you to download, that is, pull from your deck one ship that you could use. So a sealed tournament, this very quickly allows you to get some ships into play. Then we have a three-way treaty. This is the other one that's really useful for the tournament, sealed tournament decks, since it allows all of your factions that you would get in a premier tournament deck be able to work together. Now, there is a stipulation on this one, since it's a three-way treaty. You may have no side decks. Side decks were a concept that was introduced in alternate universe. They can be very useful, especially in decks where you do a lot of downloads, because there's a trick you can do with that. You stick all your downloads in a side deck so you don't have to accidentally draw them. But sealed deck, you probably won't be able to do that. So this is very useful for being able to get your factions to work together. Establish relations. Their good mission. Hippocratic Oath. Dharma class ship. So we have a generic ship. Non-aligned, I should say, ship. Test propulsion systems. Diplomatic relations. Another useful card for playing a multi-faction deck. Explore interstellar matter. So another any faction may attempt. Space time portal. This one was useful because it allows you to use your alternate universe cards. The alternate universe includes a doorway you can play alternate universe cards, but alternatively, this one also allows you to play alternate universe cards. So the sealed deck comes with an alternate universe deck booster pack, and at the time, alternate universe was available. So in a sealed deck, you might get a couple more alternate universe booster packs to go with a sealed deck tournament. This one actually allows you to play the alternate universe cards in that deck. Abandon ship and is the last card in here. Now opening the booster packs. Now for right now, since I want to focus on the starter decks, I'm going to set these booster packs aside. I'm going to be doing a separate booster pack opening later. Their video. So I'll do those then. Now, if we go back to our release timeline, after the introductory two-player game, the official tournament sealed deck, Deep Space Nine was actually the next one to come out. I actually do have a Deep Space Nine starter here, along with a Premier starter deck. Premier starter deck came out several months later in December. This was summer, this was Christmas. I'm going to skip the Deep Space Nine starter deck for now because I have trouble with Tribbles and Voyager starter decks. I'm going to do these in a separate video, do all four of those together. Maybe the introductory two-player game in that video, or maybe I'll do that in another separate video. So I don't want these videos to get insanely long. But the Premier starter deck goes much, much more closely with the two Premier starter decks that I have. Main reason for that is they changed one aspect of this deck, of the type of cards that they would include in. And that is, this is no longer a 60 card deck. It now has, in addition to the 60 randomized cards, which is exactly the same as other Premier card decks, 2 rares, 13 uncommons, 45. It has 8 fixed black borders. And if you look over here, you can kind of see what they are. This one is an outpost. This one is an objective or event, I think, I forget which. Then it has 6 missions. So this right off the bat comes with an outpost, bunch of missions that you can use to build a playable deck with. This right here is probably the best of the Premier Edition decks. Even throwing in a warp pack with the other ones, this one probably beats it as far as the playable cards in it because of the inclusion of those missions. It still has the standard mere mix of cards, so you'll probably get about 5 missions in the random cards, and then you get the 6 missions that it comes with. So opening this up here, you see, first off, these cards are loose. In the previous decks, they were sealed. This one, the cards come loose. Has a starter deck 2 rules book, which it is pretty similar to, but not the same as the original release. My camera likes to focus on things below it sometimes. So this is advertising alternate universe Q Continuum, first contact, and Deep Space Nine expansions as well. Taking a look at these cards, Memory Wipe is an event. This one right here says Seeds on Table. So you play it during the seed phase, and your opponent's cards may mix regardless of affiliation. Now, the way this played is that you would use it either in a sealed deck tournament or a friendly game, and both players would play the memory wipe. You'd both seed it at the beginning of the game. It creates a unique game environment where everybody's cards may mix. And as part of playing this alternate environment, basically you assume that nobody is going to try to move this event from the game. So it's really useful in sealed deck tournaments, sealed deck play, or just friendly play. So then we have 6 missions: military exercises, study commentary cloud, geological survey, botanical research, study pulsar, search for weapons. Most of these have at least 2, if not 3, of the main factions and so other factions that can be played or that can attempt these missions. And then we have the Ferengi Trading Outpost. This is technically a Ferengi outpost. However, rules for it are that each player's non-board cards may report mix aboard regardless of affiliation. So even though it's a Ferengi trading post, it can be used by any faction. You can report any card to this, any personnel or ship to this outpost to get it into play. So if you have no other outposts, this makes a good outpost to play. Even if you do have another outpost, this can still be a decent one to play. It also has an extra rule that you may also seed one Decora card face up. This is a Ferengi ship. So if you can get that, it makes a nice addition too. So let's clear the field here so I can try to get some focus. Start out with a cloaked mission. Have a first contact mission, and I had accidentally dropped dilemma card. Have a Cavort class AKC Vorn, Devani Ral, Kempek, Bach, Fatigue Hallucinations, Restore Errant Moon. So we have a mission here. Another USS Sutherland, Full Planet Scan, Anatronic Replicate. That would be Worf Spine on the table. A set, Binar Weapon Enhancement, Artifact. This one right here is definitely a rare because all artifacts are rare. This is a time travel pod. And we have a Federation outpost, so we did get one outpost in here at least. Klingon pad, a Romulan outpost. So this deck is just full of surprises. I haven't gotten any Romulan cards yet, though. We have Linda Larson, Treaty. Here's our first Romulan, Hackett. We have Batral, non officer, Kate, Type 6 shuttle, other dilemma, escape pod, red alert. Here was the one I was saying before was a slightly problematic card because it allows you to play as many ship, personal, and cards as desired each turn. So this drastically accelerates how fast you can play cards since it You can play as many as you want. If you get this down, you can quickly get ahead of your opponent in the game. That's why the yellow alert cancels it. Callaway, Vecma, Pad, Flag, and Espionage, Hit, Evoc, Tricorder, Klingon Disruptor, Wrath, another Celllock. Not very many Romulans in this deck. You'd get a Romulan scout vessel, IKC Cavort, Charon, so Klingon Rite of Vengeance, some more espionage. This is the first Romulan on Klingon espionage I have. Ian Wallace, I have a relief mission, Lemma, another treaty. Suddenly these are upside down. Let's see how many are here. No, they're uncommon. I have no idea why they're upside down. Leg, mercenary ship, SS Galaxy, Chrome, Space Dock, Virus, Kojik, Thigh, Day, Feet, Jera, and Galanthon, and one more equipment, Romulan Disruptor. So this one we did get a pretty decent mix of cards in, but it can be a little bit of a detriment too, since that means the cards are all over the place. And in this deck, it looks like I only got 4 missions. Obviously, this one, if it weren't for the extra 6 missions that it comes with at the start, would be a little more difficult to build a deck around. So right now, this video is hitting the 1 hour mark. So it looks like it's a pretty good time to wrap things up. In my next video, I'll be doing the Deep Space Nine Trouble with Tribbles and Voyager starter deck. That should be interesting because I've never opened any of those. At this point, it's time to say goodbye.